Hello, future millionaires, and welcome back to the Get Rich Slow podcast. We are your hosts, Adrian Shermer and Rob Delavan. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Adrian.
And we are joined today by one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, Rachel Delavan. Good morning, Ray.
No relation.
No relation. Total strangers. They bumped into each other on the street. We had her on the show.
I don't know them.
Depending on who you ask, Ray may or may not be Rob's sister. They've been in business together for, how long have you guys been working together?
Like 6-7 years now, Rachel? Is that
7.
right? You've been putting up with me for 7 years? Jeez.
7 long years.
Wow.
Oh, man. Okay.
That is incredible. So today we are going to have a talk about negotiating the deal. And I know we've had a few talks on negotiation, but this is kind of one of these subjects, negotiation applies to every aspect of finance, right? And every aspect potentially of your life, your interpersonal relationships, which is the big picture and part of getting there, where we're trying to get our listeners. So, Ray, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I know that you are also a certified master negotiator. Can you start by explaining what that means?
It's a really cool accolade that I've just spent time taking classes and getting educated to earn that title.
And
Fantastic.
Lots and lots of hours and lots of classes, but
And then lots of application.
yes. And it's paid off, I don't know, thousands of times over, I'm sure. So anyway.
Yeah, It's pretty incredible.
So.
You're probably not probably. I would say, in my opinion, definitely a better negotiator than Rob. No offense, Rob. And
thank you.
It's a kind of an unassuming thing because you don't look like, I guess, like the cartoon stereotype that I would have in my head of like some guy with a cigar hanging out of his mouth who's gonna just like cut throat for the best deal.
Bring in the closer.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I picture. But that's kind of part of the big picture here. Catch more flies with honey than
vinegar.
Whatever the phrase is, vinegar.
I think it is. Yeah.
So let's dig into that. Rachel, as an expert in the negotiation process, what are some common tactics that you use to submit a competitive offer?
Well, a big part of submitting a competitive offer is knowing your audience. And, you have the buyer, but obviously if I'm submitting the offer, I'm representing, and then there's the seller. From a selling agent, which I do as well, you would be shocked at how many offers I receive that just show up in my email inbox. And that agent has never reached out, never called me, never even texted me, never asked me one question on what my sellers are looking for. It's mind-blowing because our job as a real estate agent is to negotiate, and they haven't negotiated, so they don't know what they're writing. So from a buyer's side, the very first thing to do is to contact the seller's agent and find out what the sellers are looking for. Learn, figure out who my audience is, figure out what their family situation is, if they have one, or, why they're selling, and what are all of the important things that they're looking for in order to accept an offer. And there's so many moving parts to an offer. It's not just price. There's so much more than price. The terms are often just as important, if not more important, and are also going to lead what happens during the transaction based on what terms you've written.
Rob, what's that fun nickname you have for real estate agents who don't know how to negotiate?
Oh, they're Uber drivers who open doors.
Yeah.
And they, I don't know, what is that? About $15 an hour, maybe 20?
It's a pretty overpaid Uber driver if that's all you're going to do. So I love that you guys bring the value in this component. Right. Ray, what's your process? Oh, go ahead.
One of the questions that Rachel's asked for years is, and we came up with this way back, I don't even remember when, but asking if you're representing a buyer, Rachel, and she does this seamlessly. She asks the listing agent, or the selling agent is the vernacular we use, but she asked them, "Oh, how did you get this listing?" And It's absolutely amazing. And it's
It
truly a
seems so benign.
tactical question,
Yeah.
because what you're really doing is you're asking them for information that they deem non-threatening, right? And they actually want to, basically, they made a sale, right? They made a sale by getting the listing with that client.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they want to, if you will, putting it not so delicately, brag about the sale that they won to you, versus like that should probably be something that would be more like kept in-house. Maybe they could brag it to their coworkers within their own brokerage, but everybody wants to talk about their success. And that was a big success for a real estate agent to get a listing. Well, Rachel asked this question, and she asked it in such a, like you said, a benign way. And they just gush over how they know them and what happened and this and that. And it's amazing the information that they will turn over in that process. And all you have to do is sit there and listen. And this is what Rachel does way better than I've ever been able to do, is she sits there and listens. It might have something to do with being a woman, but anyway, we don't need to go down that
with a
that
little
rabbit
rapport
hole.
building.
Right.
What's your process, Ray, for figuring out what the other side of the transaction is looking for? How do you communicate your client's needs? And is there a negotiating process that happens behind the scenes from the client?
Oh, absolutely. So, it starts out with the very, very first communication that I have with that listing agent. Even if it's just, hey, I want to show this property, how I present myself and my communication with them starts from that very, very first touch. And people don't always realize that, you're setting up a precedence for what your communications are going to look like with them. And if you can start building that trust from that very, very first touch, whether, you end up writing an offer or not, that is the most important thing. And then, you go from there. Hey, my clients loved it. Here's their situation. What are your sellers looking for? Like, maybe, they need time to find a replacement property, and it's, a big pain point for them would be they don't want to close on their house and have to move out and find interim housing and, be homeless essentially. And, that might be more important than like upping the price by $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, like giving them that time that they need to stay in the house. It's called a rent back. Could be something that's a really big deal. And if you wrote the offer, close in 30 days to somebody like that, and you didn't know what they needed, then they're going to be like, no, I don't want this one because, they're going to kick us out of our house and we're not going to have time we're going to have to move twice, which is just a super big deal. And then, there could be like inspection terms, like what are other people writing? There's a lot of different scenarios with inspection terms, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but making those competitive. Like, one thing that I can do is shorten the inspection period, which means the cold feet period, where my buyers can pull out for any reason during that time. Well, a standard inspection period is 10 business days, which is 2 weeks. So those sellers could be unsure if my buyers are going to move forward with the sale for 2 weeks. Well, so the way to combat that and give them some peace of mind of like, hey, if this isn't the place that ends up working out for my buyers, I might cut that in half and do 5 business days, which is 1 week. That would allow them to go back on the market if they needed to, or move to a backup offer really quickly. So there's less time off the market, and time off the market is money lost. And so all it does is put more stress on me to get inspections scheduled really quickly with contractors that we know, like, and trust. And then if we need bids to actually get numbers to figure out what these things are going to cost, of what we might be asking for as far as repairs go, because we give our contractors so much work and have such a solid relationship with them, I'm able to call up favors and say, hey, contractor, I need a bid tomorrow, or, within a couple of days. Whereas you call up any contractor in the phone book and they're going to say, 4 to 6 weeks, I can get you that bid. Well, obviously we know that's not going to work.
Right.
So
yeah, and there's a competitive advantage element to that of, the fact that we have in-house contracting. We have in-house interior design, and we have a team on the back end, which to be fair, there are the top, 2 to 5% of the real estate brokers in any particular region. And they're going to have such volume that they can handle that. Right. And they can do what we can do. So this isn't novel, novel ideas. This isn't strategies that no one else can do. 90% of our peers in our industry can't do it very well. And maybe that's unscientific, but I mean, that's what we found. But going back to like the rent back conversation, that's not a novel tactic either. Like most real estate brokers would be like, oh yeah, rent back. Rachel, you're not talking about anything special here. But here's the thing. There's a concept of, if we're talking about rent back, we're talking about why we would shorten the inspection. We're talking about, maybe limiting repairs to certain items. These are all, none of them are novel things. I mean, we're frankly, not that smart that we're inventing new ways to do real estate. There's millions of people out there that are doing real estate across the country. And, is that us that's really reinventing the wheel? No, but we're having the conversation. And you'd be amazed, even the top 5% production wise, real estate brokers, even in our area, that a fair amount of them don't have the conversation. Yeah. They can produce, they're incredible marketers. They can do a ton of volume, but they're not having the conversations. They're in the 6 or 7, sometimes 8 out of 10 offers that are written with literally no pre-work whatsoever. It's just, here's the offer, it's submitted. That's the concept. Rachel pairs all of the tools that we have, which is unique to the top end of our industry, with the fact that she's a master certified negotiation expert who can actually pair that up with the conceptual tactic of, hey, guess what? We communicate. And all the time, and Rachel gets this more than I ever have, is brokers on the other side will take oftentimes less money or lesser terms because they want to work with her. And that's that phenomenon where you said, Rachel's a better negotiator than I am. She is, because she's more likable than I am. It's really amazing. It's just this phenomenon that has developed over the last few years.
Well, bro, you're really cool too, and I learned a lot from you. So you can give yourself some credit. But thank you.
Thank you for that. You don't need to blow smoke up my ass.
Too mushy in here.
Exactly. A big part of it, though, is just treat others how you want to be treated. It's right. This isn't a competitive. This isn't an against each other. Like, the seller needs to win, the buyer needs to win, and a win. It can be a win-win for everybody. And that doesn't mean it has to be 50-50 equal. Like Rob just said, like sometimes it's not always about price. Sometimes it's about the communicate. Well, it's always about the communication, but be kind.
Right. So I want to go back also to that, the negotiating process that happens behind the scenes from the client. And Rachel, you have an example of that. We were actually talking to a client of ours yesterday who we recently closed. And we actually used this broker. We put them on speakerphone in front of, I don't know, the team of 10 or 12, whoever was in the room at one of our weekly meetings. And Rachel, the big point there was we were able to get that agent to show their true colors, even though, they got pretty mean and nasty really quickly because we weren't buying what they were selling, so to speak. But the one thing was the behind the scenes from the client, and you were talking to our client about that, and you said something to the effect of, well, they made a decision without even consulting. So just expand on that.
Yeah. So, we received an offer that just, it wasn't what the client was looking for, and it wasn't in the client's best interest to accept the offer. We had multiple showings scheduled for the weekend, and this buyer's agent wanted us to accept this offer on a Thursday and cancel all of the showings that were scheduled. And she got really, really, really frustrated that we weren't willing to accept the offer that she submitted. And, we're like, well, if you if you can, change the terms to this, and if you can change your price, up to somewhere in this range, then, that's more so what our seller is looking for. And she just got really, really frustrated, and she's just like, no, there's no, my buyers won't do that. They won't go that high in price, and they won't change those terms. And it's just like, we literally just presented this to you of, what it would take to make it worth it to shut down and not receive, shut down showings before the weekend and not receive potentially multiple offers to negotiate and pit against each other and, maximize our sellers' offers. She just told us no, and she didn't even like right then and there, and didn't take that back to her buyers and say, hey, like, this is what they want, this is what we offered, and this is what they're asking for. And to me, that's an absolute disservice to her buyers, because you can't decide for them. You have to let them decide, and she wasn't even, she was so caught up in that emotion. Yeah. That she's just like, nope, they're not going to do it. And it's like,
so maybe they would have, and maybe they would have ended up with a house. Of course they didn't. And of course, our agents are listening to this person try to talk us into it, and, tell us that it was in our client's best interest to work with her and her clients, when it obviously was not. And it just got really interesting. It was an incredible teaching moment, but it's an
aggressive strategy out of the gate too.
Right. And they haven't, this person has been a realtor, I think she had said, for something like 18 years. And she was just shutting it down without even engaging with the client. And that's the lost opportunity there. And obviously there's never going to be an opportunity for us to tell her that, to teach her, especially given her attitude, in that process. She wouldn't necessarily take it from us. But, and the funny thing is we ended up with, 4 offers on that property, and we ended up exactly what we told her it would take to shut it down. And it was very reasonable numbers that appraised out. It ended up closing. We had a very happy buyer and buyer's agent. We had a very happy client on our side as we were listing it, and so forth. And I mean, it was a success story all the way around. So that's the interesting piece, is there's so much behind the scenes that the clients won't ever see. And sometimes I kind of feel like that the lack of transparency there kills a lot of deals before they ever have a chance to get off the ground. If we get a counteroffer, no matter what, even if it's verbally, we're going to immediately be discussing that with our clients every single time, 100%.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Let me get back into some of these questions we have. Do you ever have a deal with a difficult buyer or seller on the other side of negotiations? How do you work around that? And I know the answer is yes, because I've been part of some of those transactions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Buying, the important thing to understand about real estate is that it's emotional. It's an emotional process for people. These are people's homes. They either live in it or they're going to live in it, and, spend all of their time and their moments with their family or friends, or, it's their comfortable space. And understanding that is extremely important. And understanding that when a buyer or a seller becomes difficult, so to speak, figuring out the why, figuring out what is causing that anxiety, what is causing that emotion, what is causing them to, be driven by that, and, become hard to, potentially communicate with, is the number one thing. So, if it's my buyer or my seller, it's kind of like, you go take them aside and just talk to them, like, what's going on, what's the driver of this, and figuring out that then is going to always lead to the solutions. And if it's not with my buyer or seller directly, and it's, I have to go, it's the seller and I'm representing the buyer, or vice versa, it's essentially having a similar conversation with the listing agent or the buyer's agent to figure out, where their clients are at, and collaborating with them to find it's just about being solution driven. And I know that's kind of cliche, but it's so true. And a lot of times, it involves some coaching of the other side's agent, but by communicating, once again, it's easy to help them help their clients, which ultimately helps our clients.
Right.
Absolutely. I think it's, sometimes the simplest solutions really are the best. It should sound simple. This isn't a complicated game that you guys are playing, but I do agree that there's a lot of agents that look at this as some sort of single metric scale, that a negotiation is the needle more on my side or yours. And it's really more of a layer cake. And it's kind of, this applies again, we can make analogies out to real life. This is the love languages in application. If my love language is a rent back and your love language is a seller credit to help you with your closing costs, we can both win that scenario. There doesn't have to be a winner or a loser. We can give up ground where we don't care as much, and we can gain ground where it's really important. And as you're saying, if you come in hot out of the gate, aggressive with your negotiation, that could sound to some people who watch, I love the ABCs of closing. I love aggressive sales. Don't get me wrong. Like I love, there's some movies, boardroom style movies that really sensationalize the concept of negotiating. But the truth is, the best negotiators make both sides somehow feel like they won, like there's a victory for everybody. Real great negotiation doesn't leave a loser.
Right. And one of the biggest questions we ask when we're typically on the listing side, but sometimes on the buyer side, if they're interviewing us, is they'll ask us, well, what should we be asking other agents, or we'll enter into that conversation. Hey, who else are you interviewing for this position? And oftentimes it's, oh, no one. Well, you should probably talk to more than one person. That's a smart thing. And I encourage that. But we ask, what is the number one thing that a real estate agent does to justify the outrageous fees that a real estate agent charges, right? And you're talking tens of thousands of dollars potentially, right? What could possibly be worth that? And there's only one answer, and it is, we are professional negotiators. That is what we do. There is no other part of a transaction that provides even a tenth of the value that a professional negotiator does, if properly applied.
And on that, it's like, that's where people get so stuck on price. And it's just like, no, there is so much more that affects your pocket by thousands of dollars than just, oh, I want to buy this house for this price. Like it doesn't work that way. There's so many layers to it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Anyone can take pretty pictures and post on websites to market your home.
Lay down a little mulch to make it look good for the street appeal or whatever.
Pull some weeds, right? Yeah.
Maybe spray paint some grass if you're.
Yeah, there you go. Make it green, right? As they like to do in Arizona. So,
well, fascinating.
Yeah, it's just it never ends how deep you can go with that side of things. Everything else is.
We need all day to talk about it if you want all the details.
Yeah.
But keep us moving anyways, Adrian.
Maybe we'll peel together a class.
Yeah.
I think that ties us up for these, because we managed to actually run into a few of the questions that I had planned to ask already with our dialogue. So let's do a summary here with you, Ray. With the takeaway that I'm hearing is that this isn't a war. It's a negotiation. It's a trade negotiation. So we've got to listen to the other side. And it's so interesting how you disarm people by asking these benign questions, but you've got to learn about, and it's great how you're able to help the selling agent in a scenario where you're representing the buyer or vice versa, you give them the win. You're handing away, here's something you can take that you can say, I won this, and here's what we're going to give in return.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And often that win is not a loss to the buyer, right. And it's communication, figuring that out, knowing your audience and figuring out what's important to your audience.
Right. Yeah.
And be nice.
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk.
Do you feel like when someone's picking a real estate agent, are there different styles of negotiation that you should try to pair yourself with, or a certain point where you should maybe take your hands off and just trust this person to do their job?
Well, trust is extremely important. It's the number one thing. You know, you have to have, your client has to trust you, and that does take time to build. But as far as picking your agent and negotiation style, like I will always hands down say, find somebody who is a collaborative negotiator, not a competitive negotiator. You know, when you're fighting and trying to be competitive, like there's always a loss on one side, whereas it doesn't have to be that way. It can be a win-win for everyone. So, you know, think collaboration with the other team, you know, the opposite team.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've been sidelined for a few of these negotiations and talked to both agents in my line of work. And it's truly the ones who get together and say, how are we going to solve X problem? It's two real estate agents acting, you know, to solve problems instead of to win.
Right.
And keeping your emotions in check.
Yeah. And like you said, Rachel, being kind.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
at
can
the
be
end of the day,
passionate. Just don't let yourself run on emotion.
Right. It's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Ray. I really appreciate you giving your insight and your unique viewpoint on the negotiation process. And I hope our audience has learned from this. When you're shopping out for a real estate agent, still at the top of my list is the negotiation process. That's where the margins are. That's where the differences are made. Especially in the modern age, right? You can look stuff up online. We've all done it, even probably as a hobby, flipping through one or another online website with the catalog of homes. But that's the differences made here at the negotiation table.
Love it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, audience, for hanging with us here. This is a fun one, near and dear to our heart, and we'll catch you next time on the Get Rich Slow podcast.